Good evening and welcome to this evening's edition of Broadcasting Scotland, Scotland at 7. I'm Ruth Watson. Ukraine update, day 83 of the war. More than 260 Ukrainian soldiers, many of them wounded, have been evacuated from the besieged Azovstal steel plant in the port city of Mariupol, appearing to cede control of the city to Russia after 82 days of bombardment. Ukraine's Deputy Defence Minister, Hanna Maliar, said late on Monday that 53 severely wounded soldiers were evacuated to a hospital in the Russian-controlled town of Novoazovsk and that more than 200 others were transported through a corridor to Olenivka. An exchange procedure will take place to bring evacuees home, she said. It was unclear how many soldiers remained in the steelworks or the exact number who left, but Ukraine's President, Volodymyr Zelensky, said, "We hope to save the lives of our boys. I want to underline, Ukraine needs its Ukrainian heroes alive. This is our principle," he said in a video statement. Ukraine Deputy Prime Minister Iryna Vereshchuk this morning said of the wounded servicemen, "After their condition stabilizes, we will exchange them for Russian prisoners of war. We are working on the next stages of the humanitarian operation." The Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has said that Finland and Sweden joining NATO would probably not make much difference, as the two countries had long participated in the alliance's military drills. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko has said virtually no peace talks are going on at the moment, accusing Ukraine of withdrawing from the process. Lviv's governor, Maxim Kozitsky, has said overnight a missile hit the Yavorov regional branch of the Lviv railway and infrastructure was damaged. Kozitsky also claims Ukraine's air defense shot down 3 cruise missiles last night. The governor of Russia's Kursk region, Roman Starovoyt, has claimed that Russian forces suppressed fire from Ukraine on the Russian village of Alexeyevka. Jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny is due to appeal against a 9-year prison sentence he was handed in March on charges that he and his allies are politically motivated. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has posted that he has held talks with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen called for US allies to step up financial support for Ukraine on Tuesday, saying that funds announced so far would not be sufficient for the country's short-term needs as it battles the Russian invasion. Now going back to the story about the Ukrainian troops being evacuated from the Mariupol steelworks, more than 260 Ukrainian soldiers, many of them wounded, have been evacuated from the besieged Azovstal steel plant in the port city of Mariupol, appearing to cede control of the city to Russia after 82 days of bombardment. Ukraine's Deputy Defence Minister Hanna Maliar said late on Monday that 53 heavily wounded soldiers were evacuated to a hospital in the Russian-controlled town of Novoazovsk. More than 200 others were transported through a corridor to Olenivka, Maliar said. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces said that the soldiers defending the steel plant had performed their combat task, and now the main goal was to save the lives of personnel. By holding the steelworks, they stopped Russian forces from rapidly capturing the southern city of Zaporizhzhia, a statement on Facebook said. It was unclear how many soldiers remained in the steel plant, but Ukraine's President, Volodymyr Zelensky, said, "We hope to save the lives of our boys. I want to underline, Ukraine needs its Ukrainian heroes alive. This is our principle," he said in a video statement. The evacuation is likely to mark the end of the longest and bloodiest battle of the Ukrainian war, and is a significant defeat for Ukraine. Mariupol is now in ruins after a Russian siege that Ukraine says killed tens of thousands of people in the city. For Ukrainians, the Azovstal plant has become a symbol of resistance, with hundreds of troops continuing to fight on there even after the rest of the city had fallen to Russian forces. Some 600 troops were believed to have been inside the city steel plant. The Azov regiment said it was fulfilling orders to save the lives of its troops. The regiment, which has in the past had national far-right affiliations, was a militia fought to fight the Russians after the invasion of Ukraine in 2014, but it has since become a unit of the Ukrainian National Guard. It says its troops in Mariupol, on the Sea of Azov in the southeast, had held out for 82 days, buying time for the rest of Ukraine to battle Russian forces and secure Western arms needed to withstand Moscow's assault. Hours before the evacuation, Russia said it had reached an agreement to remove the wounded soldiers. A humanitarian corridor has been opened through which wounded Ukrainian servicemen are being taken to a medical facility in Novo Azov, Russia's defense ministry said. Azovstal's last defenders have been holding out in bunkers and tunnels built deep underground to withstand nuclear war. Civilians were evacuated from inside the plant, one of the largest metallurgical facilities in Europe, earlier this month. As the Azov evacuations were underway, Ukraine fighting continued on front lines across Ukraine. Growing numbers of refugees are being made homeless and, in many cases, destitute after relationship breakdowns with their Homes for Ukraine hosts in the UK, community organisations have said. Some predict the system could crash entirely after reports of Ukrainian refugees being asked to leave the homes of their sponsors with only 1 day's notice, leaving them no option but to be referred to local authorities as homeless or, if they can afford to, attempt to seek last-minute rented accommodation. Community leaders say such incidents were happening across typically well-meaning hosts who may have failed to anticipate the enormity of the commitment until refugees arrived in their homes, adding to the stress and trauma of the newcomers. Other factors cited include costs, personality and cultural clashes, hosts not setting house rules, misunderstandings, and communication problems. Iriana Terlecki, a board member of the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain, said, "Our community is seeing these cases frequently, and our perception is that they are increasing." They also report similar issues among those who arrived on the Ukraine Family Scheme, either caused by space problems or relationship breakdowns. "We are finding that sponsorship relationships are breaking down, in spite of the very clear desire of people to help," Terlecki said. The Local Government Association, which represents English local authorities, said there had been a concerning increase in Ukrainian arrivals presenting as homeless, and it urgently called for a rematching process so refugees were not left in limbo. Marta Muliak, who has hosted several Ukrainian families since the start of the war and is chair of the First London Plast, a Ukrainian scout group, said, "A lot of people say, of course I can give room to a Ukrainian, but then bills, cost of food, people maybe don't think about that until they have come." Many newly arrived refugees are still experiencing the trauma of having lived in a war zone. Muliak has seen children fall to the floor after mistaking a loud noise for a bomb. The Homes for Ukraine scheme has a lot of problems and eventually will lead to a total crash, she said. Anya Abdulak from Families for Peace, a charity helping Ukrainians in North London, said she was recently contacted by a woman who came to the UK with her daughter to live with a woman she met on Facebook. But when they arrived, the host was going through a divorce, and it transpired that she was a strict vegetarian who did not want meat in the house, leading to tension. The situation now is that she, the host, wants her to move as quickly as possible, she said. In a statement between the House of Commons today, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss claimed the relationship between Great Britain and Northern Ireland had been undermined by the Northern Ireland Protocol, as she confirmed plans to table legislation that would scrap parts of the agreement. The bill is not expected to be published for several weeks, but, if enacted, could spark a trade war with the EU. Liz Truss said the government's first priority was to uphold the Good Friday Agreement, which she said was under strain, despite the majority of people and businesses in Northern Ireland supporting the Northern Ireland Protocol. Citing issues such as the need for veterinary checks and EU rules that prevented the Treasury from cutting taxes, she said, "These practical problems have contributed to the sense that the East-West relationship has been undermined," adding, "We need to restore the balance of the agreement." The Foreign Secretary proposed legislation that would create a green channel for goods going to Northern Ireland from Great Britain that would not go on to the Republic of Ireland, with mandatory checks halted for these exports. Goods moving onwards to the Republic would still face checks via a red channel. This new system would involve a trusted trader scheme using real-time commercial data. The legislation would also remove regulatory barriers to goods made in Great Britain being sold in Northern Ireland and allow the UK to determine tax and spending. The European Commission's Vice President in charge of Brexit, Maros Sefcovic, said Trush's proposals raised significant concerns, adding that unilateral actions contradicting an international agreement are not acceptable. In a statement in response to Liz Truss's speech to the Commons, Ms Šefčovič warned, should the UK decide to move forward with a bill disapplying constitutive elements of the protocol as announced today by the UK government, the EU will need to respond with all measures at its disposal. EU diplomats say no decision has been taken on the nature of retaliatory action, which would only follow a move by the UK government to override the protocol. EU officials have been urging the UK to return to the negotiating table to discuss proposals from Šefčovič that they say would sharply reduce checks on goods moving between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The Office for National Statistics, the ONS, released new data on the UK labour market earlier today. These show that the Scottish unemployment rate in the 3 months to March 2022 was 3.2%. This is down 0.9% points on the 3 months before. During this period, the employment rate hit 75.6%. This is up 1.4 points on the previous 3 months. Meanwhile, the rate of economic inactivity was 21.9%, down 0.7 points on 3 months before. Notably, the number of people unemployed in Scotland hit 88,000, a record low since the current Labour Force survey series began in 1992. Commenting, Employment Minister Richard Lochhead said, while we continue to face economic challenges with the rising cost of living, the negative effects of Brexit, and the economic impacts of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the Scottish Government remains committed to doing all we can to help our economy recover. By delivering on the actions of the National Strategy for Economic Transformation, we will build an economy of secure, sustainable and satisfying jobs. In 2022 to 2023, up to £113 million has been allocated to employability services, Mr Lochhead continued, including £60 million for No One Left Behind and an additional investment in the Parental Employability Support Fund and tackling child poverty. We are also continuing to invest in employability and training to support young people through the Young Persons Guarantee and those who face barriers to employment through our National Employability Service, Fair Start Scotland. Excuse me. Pardon me. Dr. Stuart McIntyre of the University of Strathclyde's Pardon me. I hope I've managed to crush the frog in my throat, but please bear with me if I get any more tickles. Guarantee and those who face barriers to employment through our National Employability Service, Fair Start Scotland. Dr. Stuart McIntyre of the University of Strathclyde's Fraser of Allender Institute said, in a number of ways, the Scottish labour market is back to its pre-pandemic levels of activity. Rates of employment, economic inactivity and unemployment are in line with, or slightly better than, where they were at the same point in 2019. On the second day of her visit to Washington, the First Minister spoke at a round table with business and policy leaders at Climate Solutions Foundation. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon reflected on progress since COP26 and spoke of the importance of working with businesses to ensure a just transition to low-carbon energy sources. Last night, the Speaker of the US House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, welcomed Nicola Sturgeon to the United States Capitol. Speaker Pelosi and the First Minister discussed Ukraine, the Northern Ireland Protocol, women's rights and Scotland's future. The First Minister said, above all, we celebrated and reinforced the long-standing relationship between the United States and Scotland. The UK government has allowed a perfect storm to brew, according to the SNP, as food prices look set to soar at a cataclysmic rate. It follows comments made by the Chief Executive of Scotland Food and Drink, James Withers, who told Good Morning Scotland that even if the war in Ukraine hadn't occurred, the UK would still be facing a huge rise in food bills. Mr Withers said, Had the war in Ukraine not happened, we were already facing energy bills rising, a world waking up from a pandemic. Brexit for sure has made nothing better, but has made a number of things a lot worse. The labour market is in disarray. The comments come less than 24 hours after the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, suggested Britain was heading for an apocalyptic rise in food prices. Commenting on the SNP's Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Deirdre Brock MP, said, "Under Boris Johnson's watch, the Tories have allowed a perfect storm to form, with energy bills rising, taxes going up, and wages stagnating, and no form of support in sight to counter it." The comments from Mr Withers this morning confirms what we already knew. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is not solely to blame for the financial nightmare facing families across Scotland and the rest of the UK. It is time for Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak to get their head out of the sand um, and deliver a comprehensive package of support to counteract the cataclysmic rise in food prices. This crisis has been made far worse by their poor governance. Therefore, it is their job to fix it, Ms Brooke continued. The SNP and Scottish Greens in Glasgow City Council have reached a working agreement which will see the SNP form a minority administration and the Greens taking on a number of key roles within the council. The Green Group will take on the chair of a new Net Zero and Climate Progress Monitoring Committee and a Just Transition Working Group. Greens will also chair the Neighbourhood, Housing and Public Health Committee and will have vice chairs on the Education, Skills and Early Years and Environment, Sustainability and Carbon Reduction committees. Pledging to build a fairer, greener and more inclusive Glasgow through the working agreement, Greens say they are confident that their increased role within the City Council will lead to greater progress in tackling the climate emergency and the cost of living crisis. Both the SNP and the Greens have committed to delivering a more open, inclusive and participative council, pledging to be more responsive to the needs of the people of Glasgow after the election left the council under no overall control. Green Group convener, Councillor Martha Wardrop, said, "The recent election result clearly showed us that the people of Glasgow agreed with our vision for a more effective, more democratic and forward-looking council. With our largest ever group of Green councillors, we will hold a minority SNP administration to account while working collaboratively across party lines to deliver a fairer, greener and more inclusive Glasgow and to bring about the change that people voted for." The first full council meeting since the May 5th election will be held on Thursday the 19th of May and will see the elections of key roles within the council, including a leader and a Lord Provost. The Carbon Neutral Islands project is a programme for government commitment aimed at supporting islands to become carbon neutral by 2040. The islands included as part of this project are Hoy, Islay, Great Cumbrae, Raasay, Barra and Diel. They've been identified by the Scottish Government in collaboration with local authorities and island representatives. A report on the project will be published over the summer, and plans will be developed for individual islands in collaboration with key partners and the communities involved. The project will also align with the Scotland-wide net zero work and contribute to Scottish Government's 2045 net zero commitment, while working closely with communities to move towards net zero in a fair and just way. The Carbon Neutral Islands project aims to share good practices and learnings from the project with all other Scottish islands. Announcing the 6 islands during debate in the Scottish Parliament, Rural Affairs and Island Secretary Mari Gudjon said, "Scotland is at the forefront of climate change mitigation and adaptation at the global level, and I've always believed that our islands will contribute significantly to the country's net zero commitment. I was pleased to announce at COP26 that we are taking this ambition further than the original commitment, now aiming to support 6 islands in their journey towards carbon neutrality by 2040. This project is another testament to Scottish Islands being in the vanguard of innovation, leading the way in the journey to net zero, while supporting other areas across Scotland." The number of Scottish students from deprived areas progressing to Scottish universities is at an all-time high. The latest statistics show 16.7% of Scottish domiciled full-time first-degree students at Scottish universities are from the 20% of the most deprived areas in the country. This is an increase from 16.4% in 2019-20 and represents an additional 545 students. There has also been an increase in the number of students who are care experienced, from 87% in 2019-20 to 91%, or from a deprived background, from 87.5% in 2019-2020 to 90.2%, returning for their second year. Higher Education Minister Jamie Hepburn said, "By 2030 we want 20% of students entering higher education to come from Scotland's most deprived backgrounds." These statistics show another step towards that, with a record number of Scottish students from deprived areas enrolling in university for the first time. This highlights the fact that Scotland continues to be an attractive place to study and live for prospective students. The Commissioner for Fair Access has previously said that Scotland is setting the pace in the UK in widening participation. "We believe every young person should have opportunity to reach their full potential, no matter their circumstances," Mr Hepburn concluded. More than £3.25 million has been issued in disability payments to children and young people since Child Disability Payment launched. It is estimated that, as of the 31st of March 2022, a total of 3,050 children and young people were in receipt of the payment. The total number receiving payments includes 555 people who have had their disability living allowance for children payment transferred from the Department of Work and Pensions. Figures for the 26th of July 2021 to the 31st of March 2022 include an initial pilot period where child disability payment was only available in Dundee City, Perth and Kinross, and the Western Isles Local Authority areas. The benefit opened to people across Scotland in November 2021. Payments began in February for children and young people whose awards transferred from the DWP. Almost three-quarters, 74%, of applications were made online, with 16% by phone. Minister for Social Security, Ben McPherson, said, "Social Security is a shared investment in building a fairer Scotland, and we encourage those who are eligible for support to apply." It is excellent to see that child disability payment is already making a difference to the lives of thousands of children and young people and their families, Mr McPherson said. New funding to help public bodies unlock and realise further investment in measures to improve energy efficiency and install low and zero carbon heat systems in buildings has been launched. The Scottish Central Government Energy Efficiency Grant Scheme will make £100 million available during this parliamentary session. The funding launch coincides with the publication of the latest analysis of public bodies' emissions, which shows a 5.8 reduction in reported emissions in 2020 to 2021 compared to the previous year. Overall, public bodies' reported emissions have now fallen by a third since reporting began 6 years ago. Over the same period, emissions generated by electricity use have more than halved across public bodies. There has been a 64% cut in NHS buildings emissions since 1990, with the £10 billion 10-year NHS capital programme supporting its net zero commitment. Scotland's first net zero hospital, the NHS Balfour Hospital, opened in 2019. Zero Carbon Buildings Minister Patrick Harvey said, "The ongoing cost of living crisis and energy security issues caused by Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine make the case for pursuing our vision to improve energy efficiency across Scotland's homes and buildings and transition away from high-carbon heating systems even more compelling. Our heat and building strategy sets our plans for more than 1 million homes and 50,000 non-domestic buildings to be running on low or zero carbon heating systems by 2030. Our support to help property owners and tenants to improve the energy efficiency of their homes and buildings will help reduce both domestic and non-domestic energy bills while also tackling climate change," Mr Harvey said. That's the news from Broadcasting Scotland at 7 tonight. As always, we couldn't do this without you. If you enjoy our programmes, please share them around, and if you can, if it's at all possible, donate. We can't do this without you guys. If you want to be the media, if you want to see the media for an independent Scotland or the media for Scotland, please support Broadcasting Scotland if you can. Thank you. I'm Ruth Watson. Good night.